me? Okay, so welcome to today's session. So today we are running through the NTDC Technician Survey information session and Q&A. We're joined today by Jared and Ollie, who are the survey team here at the NTDC and know this inside out, and will be able to answer any of your questions. And we're also joined by Jenny Hibbard from the University of Leeds, who's waving. Hi, Jenny, and thank you very much for joining us. So you can then get a first-hand experience of what that's been like for the University of Leeds in terms of planning, the process, and since they've completed the survey, what that looks like for the university. So I'll hand you over to Jared Carney now. Jared, when you're ready.
Thanks, yeah, hi everyone. So for those who don't know who I am, my name is Jared Carney and I'm the Operations Manager and Technician Survey Lead at the NTDC. And as Sav mentioned, I make up the Technician Survey Team with my colleague Ollie Manton. So to just give you a quick introduction in terms of what we're going to do today, I'll be taking you through the survey roadmap, which is really a guide to each of the stages we go through to get a live working version of the survey ready for each organisation. Then, as Sav mentioned, we'll be hearing from Jenny at Leeds about her experiences of running the survey at Leeds. Then we'll be handing over to my colleague Ollie, and he'll be talking us through about how to get ready for running the survey at your organisation and the key things to consider when beginning the process, to make sure that the survey can be as effective and impactful as possible at your organisation. And then finally, Ollie's also going to talk about the survey cycle. So what does it actually look like when someone decides to run the survey for the first time? And when that process comes to an end, where do people go next? So I'm just going to give a very, very quick introduction to what the survey is, just in case anyone in the meeting isn't familiar with what it is. I'm aware a lot of people in this meeting will have probably seen myself or Ollie talk about the survey before, so that's not what today's session is about. But just in case you're not familiar, I'll just do a very quick introduction to what the survey is. So the NTDC Technician Survey is a web-based online survey that you take through your browser, and it's designed to capture every element of a technician's current role and their past experience. So the core of the survey is a database of approximately 3,500 individual technical skills that technical staff might have experience of using. And this is a database that we've developed and refined with each organisation that's run the survey to date. So the survey was originally piloted at 4 universities within the UK. This year, it will have been completed fully by another 30. And then we've got a number more in the calendar for the remainder of this year and into next year as well. And so in terms of the purpose of the survey, for the individual taking part, it's designed to support their CPD and career development. And for the organisation running it, it's designed to support workforce planning. So again, if you've seen us speak before, you've probably seen this diagram before. I'm not going to go into great detail here, but what we're looking at here is just a diagram showing all the question areas and the things that the survey captures. If you haven't seen us speak about the survey before, I would say Ollie and I are happy to meet with anyone separately and go into this in more detail. We've got a presentation which shows screenshots of what the survey looks like, how the questions themselves function, what the outputs look like, and things like that. So please do get in touch if that is something that you're interested in. But just to give a very quick overview of what the survey is for anyone who's not familiar, I'll quickly whiz through this. So I'll start with the green demographics section at the top of the wheel and then just whiz round clockwise. So we do capture demographics information as part of the survey. So you can get some workforce profile information in addition to where technicians are based, which enables us to do reporting, not just for your entire technical workforce, but also at a more localized level as well. We capture information related to demonstrating and teaching technical skills to others, information related to activities staff are involved in to support a university in carrying out teaching and carrying out research. We capture data about people's interpersonal activities. So what sort of personal or professional support are they providing to those around them, whether that's colleagues, whether that's students, for example. We ask about management responsibilities, whether people have management responsibilities as part of their role and whether they've been supported by the university in carrying these out. We capture information related to wider responsibilities, both within the university and beyond the university. So within the university, this could be, say, collaborative teaching with staff from another area of the university, or outside the university, this could be things like involvement with consultancy or widening participation activities involving the public and things like that. We also have questions related to career pathways and how people have found their ways into their roles. So this involves capturing data related to professional registration, if people are professionally registered, who they're registered with, people's qualifications and how relevant these are to their roles, And then more specifically in terms of their career pathways, how have they found their ways into their role? So did they say work in industry before working in higher education? Within higher education, have they tended to be in one role, or have they moved around and worked in a number of different areas? And then career plans as well. Where do people want to see their career go in future, and what support would they like to receive to help them achieve this? Then, as I mentioned, we have this vast database of technical skills that might be using, and this allows the survey to capture not only technical skills that people might currently be using as part of their role, but also technical skills that they have experience of using that they might not be utilising at the moment in their current role. So this gives you a sense of sort of untapped skills resources within your technical workforce as well. In addition to this, we capture skills related to administrative and health and safety skills. So these are sort of general skills that to some degree apply to everyone. And then the skills database also goes into more niche, specialized areas of work that people might be involved in as well. And then finally, we capture information related to training and development needs. So where do people feel that they need more support? What kind of training would people like to receive to help them progress in their career, and things like that. And so I'm aware that's a very quick whiz round of all the different things that the survey captures. So as you can see, it captures a lot of information. And like I say, if you do want to know more about that and you haven't seen us talk about this in more detail previously, please do get in touch. But today, I'm here to talk about the survey roadmap. So really what I'm going to do is take you through the major headlines, the sort of key stages that we go through once an organisation has committed to running the survey, that allows us to get into a position where we have a survey that is fit for purpose for running at each organisation. So to begin with, for those who don't know, this isn't an off-the-shelf tool. It's a bespoke survey that we work with each organisation on to tailor to make sure that it makes sense to staff locally at the organisation, and to make sure that it's capturing the data that each organisation wants captured. So the NTDC survey team steers each organisation through this process. So we have a step-by-step guide where we methodically work through each bit of the survey to make sure that it's fit for purpose, verifying that it's as accessible and appropriate as possible for staff locally at the organisation, and also making sure that all potential areas of work within the technical community at each organisation are covered by the survey by the time that it goes live. So after confirming the content of the survey and making sure we've got that ready, the NTDC then creates a new bespoke version of the survey specifically for that organisation, using all the content and input that we've got from that organisation today. We then pilot this new version of the survey with a cross-section of technical staff that haven't previously been involved in the development of survey, that didn't feed into generating the content for the survey. And this allows us to confirm that all the amendments that have been made for this new version of the survey are fit for purpose, that they make sense to staff coming to it fresh. And then what we do is we collect feedback from people who are involved in that pilot to make sure that it worked for them, to make sure that it made sense, to allow us to finalize that version of the survey. So after the pilot is finished, and we've confirmed that there's no more changes that need to be made to the survey, we then launch the live version of the survey to the wider technical workforce. So prior to the launch, technicians should hopefully be well aware of the purpose of the survey, the fact that it's coming, why it's happening, why it's being run at the organisation, what the motivations are. And they should also be aware of the date that the survey is due to go live, so that they're aware to look out for their survey invitation when it arrives in their inbox. So by this point, the organisation will also have provided us with a full list of all the staff that they would like to engage with the survey, so that the survey team can distribute the survey to them all directly via email. So at this point, once we have reached the agreed launch date of the survey, we distribute the survey to the technical workforce by email, as I mentioned. What we also do is we have a contact email address alongside all the comms and engagement materials about the survey, so that any staff who perhaps see the survey being advertised, who don't receive an invitation but feel that they should have been included, can get in touch and say, I think I've been missed off the contact list. I think I should be included. Can I be given access to the survey as well? So once the survey is live, we monitor completion rates so we can see how the survey is progressing. And this also allows us to amend our engagement strategy while the survey is live to make sure that we get as thorough completion rates as we possibly can. So the survey is open for a period of usually around 3 to 4 weeks. And across that period, we provide regular updates on the completion rates of the survey while it's live. So this includes not just the overall number of staff that completed the survey each week, but also how many people have actually begun the survey, and also importantly, where in the university those people are based, so that we can see where in an organisation people are best engaging with the survey and perhaps where engagement hasn't been as positive. And this allows us to try and put in place more localised communications if necessary to make sure we're getting equal representation from across an organisation. So once the survey period comes to a close, and we're clear that everyone has been notified that the survey is coming to a close, and everyone's aware that, you know, this is their chance to submit their response to the survey, we then close the survey, and at that point, no one is allowed to respond to the survey any further. At that point, we collect the entirety of the data from all the submitted responses to the survey and share the entirety of this raw data with the organisation directly. You know, from our perspective, this data belongs to the organisation that the survey is being run at, and this is theirs to store and use however they wish going forward. However, a key part of our role as well is making sure that this data can be used as effectively as possible. So our role here then becomes creating reports to make the vast amounts of data that have been collected by the survey more accessible. So we begin creating initial reports to help people gain an understanding of the data. So this will be looking at things like workforce profile information, highlighting potential skills gaps that have become apparent from the survey, and also key training and development requests that have come through from the workforce as part of the survey process as well. So these reports are created for the technical workforce as a whole, but also more locally, so say for example, by faculty or department, and this allows us to identify trends which might be more prevalent in certain areas of the organisation, but not in other areas of the organisation. So we then collaborate with the university further to work on any more bespoke reports that they might require to ensure that, you know, the key areas of interest from the data that they want to look at are easily accessible to them, so that they can use that data, they can understand it, they can disseminate it more widely amongst the university if possible, and if they so wish to do that. And by doing that, this then enables the organisation to begin implementing changes. So having interrogated the data, this should put each organisation in a position to take evidence-based actions to help support their technical workforce going forward. So whether this is, say, using the training and development requests to put on relevant training and support for technical staff, or say looking at broader issues raised by the data, such as, say, gender imbalances within the workforce, and it allows them to begin looking at putting actions in place to work on sort of improving that situation. In terms of support at this point, the NTDC survey team is also available for a period of 6 months after the survey closes to provide further support should that initial round of reporting sort of indicate the need for further reporting or further collaboration that would help to support these follow-up actions that are being implemented at an organisation. Yeah, and so that's a very quick overview of the survey roadmap, each of the stages we go through and the role we play in them. But I'm now going to hand back to Sav so we can hear a little bit more about Leeds' experience of doing that at Leeds University.
Thank you, Jared. Yeah, and great overview and for the process for people to understand. And just to say, if people do want to pop any questions in the chat regarding what Jared's just gone through, I didn't mention at the start, but please do, and we will get to them at some point. Equally, you can send a private message if you don't want it to be public, and then we can cover that as well anonymously. So yeah, thank you very much, Jared. Yes, so now we're going to move on to first-hand experience with Jenny from Leeds. So the feedback and experiences are really key part, and I think the team are really excited for Jenny to share this and for you to all to hear what the experience was like at Leeds. Jenny's really enthusiastic about it, and they've really kind of, well, enjoyed might be not the right word, but they found it really valuable for Leeds. I think Jenny has enjoyed it. And on the page there, you can see that there's a quote from another university. These kinds of case studies and quotes are available. When you do meet with the survey team, you get a set of documentation, and it includes a lot of kind of anecdotes from people and tips and things like that. So that's pulled from one of those. But yeah, I will introduce Jared if I could. Thank you. And then Jenny, can I just get a brief introduction from yourself, what your role is, and kind of how we've ended up in this position with the NTDC in Leeds?
Okay, so I'm Jenny Hibbard. I actually have 2 roles at the University of Leeds. One is I am lead technician for the School of Biology, but the other role that I have for 2 days a week is technician lead for the technician commitment. And I will cover during what I'm talking about how we got to that position.
Perfect, thank you so much. And we do have your slides up, Jenny. So would you like us to go through those in that order, or do you want to give a bit of background first?
I've only got a few slides just to break up me talking, but I'm quite happy to give a bit of background first as to why we ran the survey at Leeds, a bit about what we were doing, who the workforce are, etc. So at Leeds, we've got about 400 technicians who are based in 5 academic faculties. And at the time of running the survey, only 2 of those faculties had formal technical structures in place, with somebody actually responsible for technicians at faculty level. The way our reporting system works means that there's no way to capture information about our technical workforce. So even just to pull up a list of names for a distribution list or something like that is just not possible. So as our slide says, challenges, understanding the technical workforce at the University of Leeds. This was a real problem for us. We didn't know who people were. We didn't know what they did. We weren't able to identify them as a group easily without asking people on the ground to give us that information. The other reasons that we wanted to run the survey were thinking about making sure that opportunities were fair across faculties, because we had a lot of anecdotal evidence that said that depending on where you worked, you had different access to training, you had different access to promotion, you had different access to sitting on committees, all of these sorts of things. So we wanted to understand how this actually ran, and then actually take best practice from different areas and show other areas how they could achieve this good standard across the board to make sure that all technicians had equal access. Thinking about future-proofing technical roles, I'm sure all of you have the same challenges with people leaving, with an ageing workforce, the things that we hear constantly, the messages that come across. So we wanted to think about making sure that we had a robust workforce for the future. And going back to that visibility side of things, just making people aware of what technicians do. We wanted to make sure that people are aware that they're involved in teaching, they're involved in research, and the huge range of things that they actually do within those 2 areas, because you just go, oh yeah, they do research. Actually, there's a whole load of skills behind that and a whole load of different levels of responsibility as well. So that's a bit about why we wanted to run the survey and what we'd identified as reasons for doing it.
Fabulous, thank you. And I know that you previously had considered running the survey at an earlier date. Are you okay to just kind of go through that process within
Absolutely.
Leeds?
So back in 2019 was probably the first time that NTDC came to talk to us about running the survey. At that time, there was some inherent suspicion within our technical workforce. We were a group of people who didn't necessarily trust the university because things happened to us. We were not involved in the change. We didn't know why people might want to capture information about the technical workforce. You think it's going to be used for the wrong reasons. So in 2019, we were coming out of that, but the wider community probably wasn't ready. And also we didn't feel that we had the support from high up within the university to do it. We felt it was something quite local to technicians. So at that point, we decided it wasn't really for us. Moving forward to 2022, at that point, all of our technician commitment activities were properly embedded within the university. We had some really good structures for communicating with the university executive group through our technician commitment steering group. We had a technician commitment working group, which is the interface with our wider technical community. So we felt that we had like a network of people on the ground, but we also had that support high up. So are you happy for me just to carry on?
Sorry, yeah, go through it, that's fine.
I'll let you
go.
As you're well aware, I can talk about this for days probably.
Yeah, I'll let you go.
So we had identified the challenges that we've just mentioned. A small group of us took this to our Vice Chancellor and one of our Deputy Vice Chancellors, talking about the technical community generally, challenges we face. And the Vice Chancellor said to us, okay, we understand. What do you want to do about it? Come back with a plan and we'll support it. So we looked into the survey again, thought, yes, this would help us identify who people are in the workforce, where they are, what they do. It would give us that knowledge to be able then to put a case together to make some changes. So we went back to the Vice Chancellor, who said, yeah, we'll fund the survey. We walked away going, hooray, you know, they've offered us some money, isn't this fantastic? And then went, well, that's great, but if we run the survey, what are we actually going to do with the results of it? Because none of us had the time to actually do it. So we went back to the university and said, thank you for offering to pay for the survey, but what we actually need is some additional support for this. If we're going to run it and do it properly, we're only going to have one chance for the technical community to trust us, and we're going to need to show some actions as a result of running the survey. And this was a really positive step, actually pushing back, and it made a huge difference because the university actually gave us a project manager, something we'd never had before. We didn't even know was possible for us to have. And we worked with them, identifying some of the challenges and what we wanted to do. And they helped us to put together a resourcing request, which pays for the 2 days a week of my time, which I mentioned already. It also pays for 3 days a week of a project support officer. So I know Anushka's out there as well, who does a fantastic job for us. And it protected 1 day a week of our chair of our Technician Commitment Steering Group. So a professor who chairs that group, it protects a day a week of her time to do these activities. And it gave us 2 years of funding, paid for the survey, paid for all the communications that we needed around the survey, which we wouldn't have thought to ask because, again, we've never been in a position to have money for communications. And it paid for our time with a guarantee that at the end they would look at the results of the survey and actually take action. So that was a major difference for us, and it meant that we were in a really good place to actually go ahead and run the survey.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think that's yeah, a really key difference between your initial kind of interest in the survey and then becoming more prepared, and the impact that that's had in terms of the results and implementation that you've been able to incorporate into it. And then in terms of starting the project, so obviously it is quite a big project, as you say, kind of both for the NTDC team and for the university team. Can you kind of talk through that? Because a lot of people on this call might not really understand what that looks like in the practical sense.
Yeah, so we did a lot of preparatory work because we didn't really understand our community. We knew that engagement was going to be really key. So well, probably even before that, we talked to other universities about how they completed the survey. So I talked to colleagues at different places. Some said they used their line manager networks to actually roll out the survey across the technical workforce. Some said they totally avoided line managers and went with sort of technician champions or local on the ground technicians to engage people. And we knew that neither of those would work with us. It was going to have to be a combination because we didn't have a clear technical management structure. With the rest of the preparatory work, we had a lot of engagement activities with our Technician Commitment Working Group, with our Technician Commitment Steering Group. We tried to get lots of people involved. We asked lots of people to try and understand why we were doing it right from the outset. We knew that we couldn't actually go ahead with lots of people being involved, but that we needed a small team to actually take ownership of it and do the hard work. So we created a working group, a survey working group. So this was technician led, and the university, when they gave us the funding and the support to do this, they were very clear that they wanted this project to be technician led. They wanted to avoid that suspicion about why is the university asking for these questions? What do they want to capture about us? What are they going to do with the information that they get? So it was very clearly technician led. So I chaired that group. We had Maria, who is one of our organisational development and professional learning partners, who supports a lot of our activities, very involved with it right from the start. We had 4 technician volunteers from our Technician Commitment Working Group. And so the 6 of us made up the main body of that survey working group. But alongside that, we had 2 sort of hosts that weren't embedded in the main group, but were there in a sort of advisory capacity. So we had somebody from HR who's involved in a lot of our technician commitment activities. And we also had somebody from the communications team. And it meant that throughout, they knew what we were doing, but they let us lead, but they were there to reference if we had any questions about how to fit things in with university policy, how to get messages across to people. So we had that support right from throughout. Maria from our organisational development and professional learning team, she led a lot of stakeholder engagement activities. So we did this with our technician champions. We worked out who we needed to talk to. We then set up meetings. We had meetings with executive deans, faculty operations directors in every faculty. And these were really invaluable, actually. We didn't have the contacts before, and now we use them for all sorts of other means of communication about events that are happening, just about having that high level support. So if we're doing something with technicians, the technicians may know but having that backup from somebody high up within their work area saying, yes, it's okay to have the time to go and attend something or to be involved in something, we found has been really helpful for us.
That's great. It's really nice to hear about the kind of cohesion between the university that it's brought for you at Leeds. And then, Jared, would you just go to the next slide, please? I'm going to ask now about the kind of engagement side of things, Jenny, because obviously there's engagement rates that come with the survey in terms of how many respondents there are, and also what that might tell you about your technical workforce and the structure. So are you able to just go through that with us?
Yeah, so right from the outset, it was really actually helpful having somebody from the communications team involved, because before we even started, as you can see from this slide, we'd planned every single email that we were intending to send out during the whole of the survey process and what the messaging behind each email was going to be. We knew exactly when we were going to target people. We also had 3 videos that rolled out across, it says 4 on there. We never made the 4th one. We decided that a report was better than a video at the end of the day. But we had a really detailed timeline. We also had this from our project manager who'd helped with the funding resource. So we'd sort of planned everything out in great detail right from the start. But I think for us, this engagement side of things, knowing when we were meeting people, when we needed people to participate in the pilot, when we would need to give those extra pushes to ask people to participate and how we were going to do it. We had that sort of really clearly set out because it is a big project. And once you start going, it's very easy for timescales to slip, especially if you're busy trying to do a normal job alongside running this. So having sort of deadlines where, you know, right, on this date, this is what we're meant to be doing. On this date, this is what we're meant to be doing. It just keeps you on track with everything. I think originally we thought we were going to be running the survey in June. We actually ran it in September, but we knew that long before we started because we'd started trying to plan how we were going to fit everything in and realised that we couldn't complete all of the engagement work that we wanted to be able to run it for June. So I would say it is actually worth investing time in that planning in a number of ways. So thinking about timings, but also thinking about what you really want to get out of the survey. So we were very clear about what we wanted to find out. We were very clear about how we wanted to find it out. So when Jared was saying earlier, you can do it at different levels, we knew that we wanted to be able to see this at faculty level because we knew there was a disparity between faculties. So different things will work for different people, but just look at your own organisation, think about what will work for you with what you've got and who you've got, and then just tailor it to what you are trying to achieve and be quite clear about what you want to get out from it, because that's how you will get the most from it.
That's great, thank you. You talk about the communications plan, and you obviously had a really extensive plan in place, and it was kind of a key, you know, preparation is key moment for you at Leeds. What kind of challenges did you face in terms of getting respondents and getting engagements, and what did that tell you about the structure?
Okay, so I think we were quite optimistic at the start. We were thinking we might hit 70% or 80% completion rate. People I'd talked to at other universities who were up there in the 80s and thinking, oh yes, we can do this. So we were full of excitement that this was going to happen. And then once we started to do the engagement work, we realised that there were big differences across our university. So the final percentage engagement we had was about 63% completion, I think. However, if you looked at faculty level, that varied from 48% up to 95%. So we've been really able to use that information. So where we were getting 95% completion rate, that was in a faculty that already had a clear technical structure, and we knew who all the line managers were. It had somebody responsible for technical services at faculty level. In the faculty that had the 48% completion rate, they couldn't even provide us with a list of their technicians at the very start of the process, and probably still would struggle to tell us who all the line managers are. So we've actually been able to use that information to ask for change. So don't necessarily think, oh, if we don't get a high completion rate, it's really bad news. Actually, for us, where things haven't been great, it's something that we knew. But now we have the data to back it up. Now we can go and say, look, this is the difference across the university. And the reasons for these differences may be because, and we have some evidence behind what we're saying. Whereas before, I think people were just like, oh, we're different because we're different. We work in different areas and we do different things. And you're saying, no, this is possible. You can have like a really joined up technical workforce, but you just need to have a structure in place to support it.
That's great, thank you. I think it's quite interesting to see that even just the planning process can already start telling you different things about your organisations that you might have expected or not have expected. I'm going to go to the next slide now, and Jenny, can you just tell us about, I guess, outputs, so people now have more of an idea of the process and what goes into that and things to consider. But in terms of why, why run the survey? What did you get out of it, and how has it benefited you?
Okay, so you get back this huge amount of data, which is really daunting. But as Jared said, they give you some initial reports. We then asked for some very specific reports. And then as I started to work through the data, I asked for more specific reports, which Jared and Ollie just kept providing. But also different ways to look at the data as well, because sometimes we wanted to be able to compare things that weren't necessarily easy to compare. So they helped us develop ways to be able to really look at things that we wanted to know as a university. So these survey insights here are just some that have actually been shared with our leadership forum, but there are a few of the ones that really stuck out. That there's this large drop off between grade 6 and grade 7, which is something that we really had expected, we knew, but it's nice to have the evidence for that. So that can go towards helping with discussions around career pathways. Another thing that really links into career pathways was that over half of our respondents have only worked in the same school in the same or very similar role. Jared and Ollie were able to provide benchmarking data so that we could see that this is slightly higher than average across the sector. And again, it's making us think, why aren't people moving? And looking at different faculties, we see different movement in the way the structures work. Sometimes people just stay in their schools, but where there's a technical structure in place, they may be moving within the faculty. So that's allowing us to think about, how do we encourage people to apply for jobs in different areas? Maybe thinking about how we make people aware of their skills and how transferable they are. But it's really interesting information for us. And I think people were quite surprised at how high that number was. Something that didn't shock us was that access to training is highly inconsistent between faculties. We knew this. We could also pull out the data that people on grant-funded projects also had lower access to training, or reported lower access to training. So again, something that we probably need to address to make sure that those people who are on those grant-funded projects are able to access the training that they need, and that their development is taken in the same way as every other member of staff. For the succession planning side of things, we were quite pleasantly surprised at the number of skills that we held as a workforce at Leeds, but we identified that 150 of these skills are at risk across 20 key areas. If we're looking at the age group above 55, we could see, and we can take that back to the faculties and say, are these skills that you don't mind if they disappear? Or are they things where we actually need to put a plan in place, maybe think about training people up so that as people head towards retirement, we're maintaining those skills, or bringing in apprenticeships to make sure that we've got something in place for later on. So talking of apprenticeships, this was one of the ones that probably most surprised us. A quarter of the people who responded to the survey started their career as a trainee or an apprentice, which really was quite shocking. We didn't realise the numbers were so high. And yet out of the survey respondents, only 2 individuals said that they were currently a trainee or an apprentice. And that makes us realise that we really don't have these entry routes for people into technical careers. We don't have somebody responsible for technical apprenticeships across the university. So one of our recommendations going forward is that we create this role and try to support apprenticeships. And obviously we'll be looking at things like T-level placements as well. But that's really given us some data that's quite shocked a number of people, that we're not supporting people, and yet we are taking people who started as an apprentice elsewhere. And thinking about some of those wider responsibilities that Jared talked about on that wheel at the start. So over 40% of our technical workforce provide informal personal and mental health support to students. and I don't think we'd realised the numbers were so high. Most of them have received no training or formal support to do this. So most people are just doing it out of the goodness of their heart and doing the best they can with the information that they have available to them, which obviously isn't an ideal situation to be in. So for us, very quickly, we ran a supporting you to support students. The student education team ran it for us. They didn't even know that technicians existed or that they could offer this course to us. So it's sort of joining up the bits and pieces together to make sure, you know, the training is there. We didn't know we could access it, and they didn't know that we might need to access it. So they ran a briefing session. I think within 2 days, we've got about 30 people signed up to it. So it was really popular. It was something that lots of people had asked for additional training in, because they wanted that formal support to know that when they're offering information, that what they're saying is correct. So yeah, I think those were some of the key findings.
Yeah, it's great to hear kind of the impact of the insights and the long-term and short-term focuses that you've been able to gain from that. And so yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. One thing, kind of, can you give any advice for people? So if anyone's on this call now, they might be in discussions with you know, a working group that might already exist, or they might have kind of no idea. What kind of advice could you give, either practical or otherwise?
Talk to other people you know who've run the survey. So if you know people at the universities, most people, if you reach out to them, will probably be happy to discuss their experience. If not, talk to the NTDC team. They may be able to put you in touch. I'm happy to talk to people. If people have individual questions, really happy. I can talk about the survey all day long. It's been so fascinating doing it. If you are definitely going ahead with running the survey, I would say preparation is absolutely key. So identifying what you think you want to find out, put time into engagement, because it will pay off later. So making sure that everybody's aware of what you're doing, why you're doing it, that they're all on board and that they're supporting it. And she said something just flitted through my mind and has just flitted out again. There was something else that was really key that I was going to say.
No worries, you can pop it in the chat if it comes to you later on. And then
that was it, quick wins. It was identify some quick wins. So almost even before you start the survey, you probably have some idea about some of the results that you're going to get. So from talking to other people, one of the things that I knew was that everybody was saying that they have a large percentage of technicians who are involved in supporting teaching, but very few of those have ever received training to support teaching. So we knew before we started that that was somewhere that we might be able to very quickly run some training around, things like advanced HE fellowships. We knew that there was a lot of interest, hadn't realised the scale of interest. So from about 400 technicians at our university, 101 respondents said that they were interested in more information about advanced HE fellowships. And we run briefings, but they don't have they're attended, but we think what's happening is that the individuals on the ground aren't feeling supported with the time to do this from where they're based. So it's not that the training isn't there, they just need that additional encouragement from their immediate managers to actually have the time to do this. So yeah, identify some quick wins, something that you can put in place afterwards so that you can say to your team, thank you for doing the survey. As a result, here is something that we've done, whilst you're wading through the rest of the data trying to find the other things that you might want to do as well.
That's great, Jenny, thank you. And I think yeah, one of the quick wins that people often do use is kind of the training and development needs, so they can kind of signpost to different heated or otherwise courses. And that's fantastic. So I think that's, well, you've covered everything brilliantly, and yeah, thank you so much for doing that. And Jared and Ollie, I can see you. Is there anything else you want to ask Jenny at the moment? All good? Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Jenny, for joining us today and for sharing that. We really do appreciate it, and it's kind of great to see what you're doing, and then we'll be working together on a case study this year to kind of put together how Leeds have incorporated what we've discussed today into their process, and the results of that. So yeah, huge thank you, Jenny, again for joining us and for your participation today. Really appreciate it. I'm going to hand back over now to Ollie. If people do have any questions for Jenny and they want to pop them in the chat, and if Jenny has to rush off at any point, then we can always forward them on to her. So Ollie, when you're ready.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sav. And thanks, Jenny. I mean, that was an absolutely fantastic insight into all of the different things that go into running the survey, from building engagement, launching the survey, and all of the really important stuff which makes up the outputs and the reports that you can make changes based on. So I'm just going to have a little chat through now about how do you know if your institution is survey ready? How do you get survey ready? So looking at resources such as funding, where's the funding coming from? Putting a business case together to obtain this funding is something that the NTDC team can help with by sharing case studies, by sharing how other institutions have done it, and sort of by talking you through how the survey may meet different objectives from a technician commitment, things like visibility, recognition and stuff like that. But also looking at the time that it takes to run the survey in terms of individuals' time, but also the time frame from that first meeting to the survey launching, and also the team that you'll need to sort of get the survey off the ground, that working group, additional support externally as well. So what are the things to consider when running the survey? So first of all, looking at what are the aims, what are the drivers, what are the targets for running the survey, who are the stakeholders, how will they be updated on progress, what do they want from the project, what does the institution want from missions? Jenny was talking earlier a little bit about those quick wins. We know that people fill out surveys and very often things don't happen with them for a long time, and that can lead to a little bit of sort of uncertainty around, why did I bother taking my time to fill in the survey? Does anything actually happen with this data? So that sharing those quick wins as a sort of priority once the survey's finished lets people know that the data is actually being used for those positive things as well. It's important to sort of align it with the wider plan. So can you brief and inform other areas of the university? Are there any other projects or development work that are being run wider that can feed into and be fed into by the running of the technician survey? If so, it also needs to be communicated to respondents who are taking the survey about how collaboration will happen and sort of what the data will be used for. It's important to think about the outputs first and work backwards. This survey, as Jared mentioned earlier, is a bespoke tool. Your aims, your drivers, your targets, they will be touching on similar themes to other people that have run the survey. But also things will be different as well. Your reasons for running the survey will be different to others. So you can use the drivers that you've come up with to sort of reverse engineer any of the additional questions that you can add into the survey, or build on any of the questions that we've got in our default database as well. Looking at what success looks like to you. So does success just mean a high percentage completion rate to give you a bigger mandate for change? Does it mean that the aims have been successfully answered by including the right questions in the build part of it? Looking at the data that collected and how that enables you to build sort of better career pathways or pool funds for cross-university training sessions, and identifying those quick wins again. So the staff involvement and the support from the university, as Jenny mentioned, they sort of put a role in that had never been done before to support the rollout of this survey. We appreciate that not every university is going to have the sort of the resources to put this in place. We've worked with a lot of institutions who have someone who's just running it alongside their day job and maybe need a little bit more help and collaboration from us. So this is something that we expect and something that we can definitely help with. But getting together a survey working group is a really important part of this. So that's normally beneficial if it's a mix of grades, subject areas, departments, faculties, roles, working groups with good external contacts in key areas as well. So when you've already briefed people like the comms teams, data teams, HR about this, they will need to feed into different parts of the survey. So already having these relationships is really helpful. The number of people in the survey working group is not as important as having the right people who have the time to give. As long as you achieve sort of varied representation, that's the most important thing, really. So, can you ask line managers of staff that are on the survey working group if they can allocate them time specifically for this project? That's something that we find is really beneficial, because there will be obviously steps that they need to take in terms of reviewing questions, adding things into the survey that will take time out of their day. Defining the technical workforce as well. That's another thing that's important to consider right from the off. It's one of the first things that we do as part of the survey development. Who is this survey looking to support? Who do we want to feed into it? What is a technician at your university? This normally uses things like HR lists, definitions and job titles, but the most important step in this is in any teams where technical staff sit, the line manager should be able to review and sign off who those people are in their teams that are technicians. And this step can often take some time to finalise, so that normally runs in the background of the other work we're doing. So engagement, I'm going to cover engagement on the next couple of slides because that's a really important part, and just want to sort of reiterate a few themes around that. So if we look at data usage, it needs to be clear who has access to which levels of the data. It helps if people with overall control or access, use and storage of the data are named. People know exactly who's going to hold that data and how it's going to be used. This question needs to be answered in our introduction and FAQs document, which is one of the first things we work with you to complete. This also forms the first page of the survey. So everybody, even those people who haven't engaged that well up until this point, will know who's going to hold the data and what it's going to be used for before they submit a response. Once they submit a response, that is consent for their data to be used in the way that you've specified. So you need to be very clear on what you're doing to make sure that people feel comfortable to go through that process. Start thinking about the levels of dissemination for reporting. So who is going to get specific school or team or departmental reports, who's going to see those faculty reports, and who's going to be able to access the sort of dynamic reporting software that we share with you so that they can drill down on data. To what level will named data get shared, basically? That's the overarching point there. With regards to time frame, the process normally takes between 4 and 6 months from the creation of the survey working group to when that survey goes live. Following that as well, that's when the real work kicks in with using the data that you get out of the survey. So that's another 6 months really of our support. So you're looking at around 12 months from actually making those changes from the very first meeting. This can vary a little bit. This can take a little bit longer. We tend to find that things sort of get laid out in a time frame, and as Jenny mentioned, sometimes they get kicked down the line a little bit, which is absolutely fine, and we allow for this, and we'll support you for any of that. And it's not like when you've suggested a date, that's the date we have to go ahead. We'll work back with you on that. There's no perfect time to run a survey. Some institutions find that straddling holiday periods or non-teaching times beneficial to give those teaching technicians time to complete it. It's important at this stage as well to think about any other staff surveys or any other projects that are running that might impact people's ability to engage and fill out the survey. So I mentioned I was going to talk a little bit about engagement. So having clarity in the message, asking why is the survey being run, who's running it, and what are we looking to get out of it, as I mentioned earlier. So it's important to agree key messages early and reinforce these throughout all communications. Think about how formal and how frequent the communications are going to be. What channels are available to us. Don't leave it too late in the process to involve the communications team. They will be the sort of best people to rely on to understand how information can be rolled out, what channels work, and things like this. Remembering that the survey needs to be created and sculpted by technical staff for technical staff, as Jenny mentioned earlier. Lower engagement is likely to be seen if the project feels like it's being done to technical staff as opposed to being done with technical staff. So that's really important. There's a couple of things on screen as well about like trust, being transparent. Like I said, that first page of the survey, people will read through that. People will want to understand where their data is being used. So it helps that that's not the first time they're seeing that message as well. So a couple of other things on engagement, looking at the challenges, timing we've covered earlier in terms of timing of running the survey, but what about the timing of those engagements? Think about what channels are available internally. Do the communications team have information or data about who opens their newsletter, who opens those wider comms? Do technical staff engage with these channels? How and when are people going to be updated? The things like social media work, is there a Teams channel internally or something similar that targets specifically technical teams? use us, use myself and Jared. As we said, we've worked with 30 universities so far. We always make sure that as part of the engagement process, we do Q&A sessions, so we can explain about how things have worked at different universities. We can understand your sort of reasons for running it internally and the concerns maybe, or questions from technical staff, so that when that survey is launched, people aren't surprised or have concerns that are raised at that point. If there are anything, of that nature, that we have the chance to explain the reasons for running the survey, that it is a development tool right from the off, so that people aren't surprised when they get in sort of that response. Think about how you can gain survey champions. So which areas of building the survey and the survey process allow you to outreach to other people? How can these people spread the word about the project locally? There's areas, for example, when we look at the skills database, where you'll have to reach out to on-the-ground technicians who are subject matter experts in all of those skills disciplines. So when people feel like they've fed into the survey, they also understand the reasons for the survey better, and hopefully, can increase the likelihood of people in their team completing it, because it's relevant to them, it's being fed into by them. We're really proud to say that we've achieved over 70% completion across all of our completed projects so far. So 70% of all the people at the universities, all of the technicians have fed in, with comparatively to sort of HR projects, they normally get around sort of 50 to 55%. So not only are we getting more people feeding into the project, it's also more targeted data. So more data is more powerful data, and it gives you the best mandate to drive forward that change. In terms of improving engagement, we always say use line managers. Where you can, this is the best comms approach. Boots on the ground and direct communication always works. People being told to do something by their line manager always works. If line managers are in a position where they can give people, time out of their day to actually take part in the survey, that's a massive benefit as well. Looking at not ignoring traditional communication methods. While some things might seem a little bit outdated, we know that not all technical staff have access to their own personal computer, or they're not sitting on computers all day. Things like hard copy posters in areas where technical staff frequent, tea making facility rooms, things like that, where people take lunch, that's really helpful, as well as sort of the word of mouth communication within their team. And look to engage with every area, put on a show, put on a road show, visit sites in person, make sure that people can put a face to a name, they know who's running the survey, who to contact with any questions, and bring people along with you. When you're doing these sort of in-person engagement opportunities, get other members onto the survey group, try and gain champions, ask people what they think. And then as a sort of last point, really, thinking about how we can offer those extras, can we put lunch on? Do we offer vouchers to certain, to random drawn vouchers for people who've completed the survey? Can we contribute to sort of technician funds for every response we get? So incentivize people and be creative with it. People will sort of be grateful if they think that they can win a £50 voucher or something on top of being able to sort of give their opinions. So very quickly and lastly from me, just looking at the survey cycle. So Jared's talked about the actual cycle of building and launching the initial survey, but what happens then? So we build and run the survey, the data is collected and shared with the institutions we've mentioned, and then changes are implemented. Initially, maybe those quick wins, and then longer in the tooth, maybe looking at things that are bigger projects that need to be undertaken. Working with other areas of the institution and raising business cases to get support for implementing these changes, and sort of reviewing that as it's cycling itself. And then the rerunning of the survey. So we are currently having conversations with people. There may be people on this call who institutions have already rerun the survey and are thinking about running the survey for a second time. I'll share in a moment on the final slide the differences between the survey reruns, because we've kind of got two options for that. We're recommending at the moment that, judging by the sort of time it takes to run the survey and the time it takes to sort of get your head around the data and make those changes, that survey reruns are looked at every 2 to 4 years. We find anything before 2 years, there's not enough time to sort of understand the data. Anything sort of after 4 to 5 years, really, the technical sort of workforce and things like that may have changed so significantly that it's hard to compare like for like. So once that survey's been rerun, review the progress, compare and contrast, contextualise the findings with your last run-in and also with the national benchmarking data, and again, implement the changes. And it's a continual cycle for sort of as long as we can support you in supporting the development of technicians. So recently this year, we looked at, as I said, speaking to the first universities about rerunning the survey, and we thought, how can we make this dynamic? How can we make this fit for purpose, and so that everybody kind of gets what they need out of rerunning the survey? People might have different motivations for rerunning the survey, as people have different motivations for initially running the survey. So we've come up with the sort of a two-tiered approach. So a rebuild and a rerun, or a like-for-like rerun. So with a rebuild and a rerun, effectively, you're taking the project right back to basics, you're stripping it down, and you're looking at building the survey again from scratch. So with this, you get a comprehensive collaboration with us, as you would of the first time you run the survey. You can review and adjust all areas, elements, and sections of the survey, and you can add bespoke sections in. You get access to our very, very latest version of the survey, which we're constantly building and improving with 3,500 technical skills, as Jared mentioned earlier. And expanded question coverage. So anything that a university adds in that Jared and I go, that's really handy to have in the survey, you get access to that as well. And you get the sort of tracking of the changes in the technical workforce, and we facilitate supporting you in that. With a like-for-like rerun, this is a slightly more basic option. So this is basically if you just want to compare the data that you had before with the same data running it now to see the changes that have been made. It's a streamlined process. We allow a brief window of amendments for anything organisationally that's changed. So, you know, if there's new faculties that have been created or new roles that have been created, of course, it will include that. It looks at a consistent survey format, so there's continuity. So everything that you're comparing is exactly the same as that you've been compared before. Any of those changes will make it as easy as we can to compare that like for like as well. And it's a really good tool for assessment of roles and responsibilities and looking at, you know, have we addressed those skills gaps? Because we're looking at exactly the same skills as we looked at before. Have we increased our skills base? You know, have we taken more people on with diverse skills as well? So if you've run the survey and you're thinking about maybe how can I contextualize that with the landscape now, come and talk to Jared and myself about rerunning the survey, and we can talk through which option will be best for you. So finally from me, Jared mentioned the building of the survey process. The most important part, I suppose, in the starting off point of that process is to have a chat with us. We want everybody to sort of understand what we do, how we can help you. There's no obligation. We've presented to plenty of people who have taken time away to think about that, however long that is. We want to support you, and we want you to sort of understand what we're doing and how we can help you at your institution. So please do get in touch to hear more about the survey. The presentation and questions specifically for your institution normally takes around 45 minutes. So that's something that we can get booked in and just, understand the landscape at your independent institution and how we can support you to find out more about your technical workforce and support the development of technicians. So that's everything from me. That was 20 minutes of me talking at you, so I apologise for that. I'll hand over to Sav to break that up for you. And yeah, if anybody's got any questions, please pop them in the chat, or our email addresses are on this slide there, so you can reach out to us personally. Thank you very much for coming this afternoon as well. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Ollie. It didn't feel like 20 minutes. It felt like much less. Time flies. I've popped the contact details there in the chat if it's easier for people to copy and paste into your notes or your contacts. And then also on the survey page, you can find out a bit more information, have a look at that skills wheel and that kind of thing. But yeah, thank you, Ollie and Jared, for that. Really interesting to kind of hear that in more detail about the survey. And again, if anybody has any questions, we have had one come in anonymously, which I'm going to share in the chat now, and then a comment from Tom Cheek. But if people do have questions, then please do contact us, or if you want to pop them in the chat now, we're going to linger around for a little bit for any questions. So please feel free to come off mute and pop your video on, or equally just pop them in the chat. And I'm going to just stop the recording now, so it will make the same noise again. But yeah, thank you very much.